Zephtara's webbed hands shook as she worked on the communication array. The Villani scientist had waited months for this chance. Tonight, the Empire guards were busy with another execution festival. She had maybe 10 minutes before they noticed her missing from the research labs. Her people lived in underwater cities before the Empire came. They were artists, dreamers, scientists who studied the deep ocean currents. They never built weapons. They never learned to fight. When the Empire ships arrived 5 years ago, the Villani surrendered without firing a single shot. They thought cooperation would save them. They were wrong. Zephythara remembered the day they took her clutchmate Velnara to the breeding pens. Velnara was only 12 cycles old, barely past her first molting. The Empire scientists wanted to study Villani reproduction. They wanted to make more workers faster. Zephythara never saw her sister again. The communication array hummed to life. She had studied Empire technology for years, forced to help them build better slave collars and tracking devices. But tonight, she would use their own equipment against them. "This is Zephythara of the Villani people," she whispered into the transmitter. "We are slaves of the domination empire in the Thexal system. They took our children. They use us for experiments. They kill us when we are too weak to work." Her voice broke. Through the laboratory windows, she could see the processing stations in orbit. Massive ships carried millions of beings between slave worlds. Some were Villani like herself. Others were different species she had never seen before. All were property of the Empire. "Please," she continued, "if anyone hears this message, if anyone cares about suffering in the galaxy, help us. We cannot help ourselves. Our spirits are broken. Our bodies are dying. In 1 generation, there will be no Villani left alive." She transmitted everything. The breeding programs where they forced different species to mate for stronger workers. The medical experiments where they tested weapons on living subjects. The punishment centers where they broke the will of anyone who showed defiance. The execution festivals where they killed hundreds just to entertain the Empire citizens. On the colony world Kepler 442b, Captain Jin Minho was reviewing supply reports when the message arrived. The human settlement was small, maybe 50,000 people spread across 3 cities. They had basic defenses and a small fleet of mining ships converted to patrol duties. Jin had served in Earth's colonial defense force for 8 years. He was used to dealing with pirates, equipment failures, and the occasional dispute with trading ships. He was not used to receiving desperate pleas for help from enslaved alien species. "Sir, you need to hear this," said Communications Officer Li Hyun. His face was pale. Jin had never seen Li look so disturbed. The message played in the command center. Zephythara's words filled the room. Her description of the Empire's cruelty was detailed and horrible. When she described children being taken from parents, several officers looked sick. "How far is the Thexal system?" Jin asked. 3 weeks at maximum speed," replied Navigation Officer Kim Yuna. "But, sir, we only have 6 ships. They are mining vessels with light weapons. We cannot fight an interstellar empire." Jin called Dr. Park Sujin from the Xenobiology Department. She was the colony's expert on alien communications. He needed to make sure the message was real. Park analyzed the transmission for 2 hours. The language patterns matched known Villani communications. The technical details about Empire technology were accurate. The biological information about various slave species was consistent with scientific databases. "It is real," Park told Jin. "This being is telling the truth about what is happening." Jin gathered the Colony Council for an emergency meeting. The 12 members listened to the message 3 times. The room was silent when it finished. "We have to do something," said Council member Choi Mina. She was a former Earth military officer who helped establish the colony. "We cannot ignore this." "What can we do?" asked Economic Director Yang Jisoo. "We have 6 converted mining ships against an empire that controls hundreds of worlds. It would be suicide." So we do nothing? Jin asked. We let millions of beings suffer and die because it is dangerous to help them? The debate lasted 4 hours. Some council members wanted to send the message to Earth Command and wait for official response. Others argued that would take months, and the slaves were dying now. In the end, they voted 6-6. As Colony Defense Commander, Jin had the deciding vote. We leave in 12 hours, he announced. Anyone who wants to come can volunteer. Anyone who wants to stay can help prepare our families for what might happen. Every ship captain volunteered. Every crew member signed up. The colony workshops worked through the night to modify mining equipment into weapons. They loaded medical supplies for rescued slaves. They packed food and water for thousands of beings. Dr. Park recorded a message to send to Earth and the other human colonies. It included Zephtara's plea and their decision to respond immediately. We know this is dangerous, Park said in her recording. We know we might all die, but we are human beings. When someone asks for help against evil, we cannot turn away just because it is hard. The 6 ships launched as the colony's sun rose. They were small and weak compared to Empire vessels. Their crews were miners and farmers, not soldiers. They had no idea what they would find in the Thexol system, but they carried something the Empire had never encountered before. They carried human determination to fight for others, even strangers, even aliens they had never met. They carried the simple human belief that some things are worth dying for. Behind them, the colony sent Park's message to every human world in known space. The message would take weeks to reach Earth, but it would reach the closer colonies much faster. And when humans heard about the Empire's cruelty, they would react in ways the galaxy had never seen before. The human ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Thexol system. Captain Jin Minho stared at his view screen and felt his blood turn cold. He had seen war before. He had fought pirates and raiders in the outer colonies. But this was different. This was horror on a scale that made his mind struggle to accept what he was seeing. Massive slave ships moved between 3 planets like metal islands in space. Each ship was 10 times larger than his biggest vessel. They carried millions of beings in cramped cargo holds. Jin could see smaller ships loading and unloading slaves like cargo containers. My God, whispered Dr. Park Soo-jin from the communications station. Look at the orbital platforms. Lieutenant Commander Yoon Tae-hyung adjusted the sensors for a closer look. The platforms were research stations where Empire scientists conducted experiments. Through the transparent sections, they could see beings strapped to tables while medical equipment worked on them. They are cutting them open while they are still alive, Yoon reported. His voice was steady, but Jin could see his hands shaking. It looks like they are testing different surgical procedures. The planet below was covered with mining operations. Thousands of slaves worked in open pits under the burning sun. No protection from radiation, no shelter from heat. When workers collapsed, they were dragged away and replaced with fresh ones. Scan for communication frequencies, Jin ordered. Try to contact the being who sent the message. Park worked for an hour before finding Zephtara's signal. The Vallani scientist was hiding in a maintenance tunnel deep in the research station. Her words came through broken and fearful. You came, she whispered. I did not think anyone would come. We are here to help, Park told her. Can you tell us how many beings are imprisoned here? Millions, Zephtara replied. 3 planets, orbital stations, processing ships, maybe 10 million total in this system, but there are hundreds of systems like this. The Empire has been building slave worlds for centuries. Jin felt something break inside his chest. 10 million slaves in just one system, hundreds of systems across the Empire. The numbers were too big to understand. We need to try diplomacy first, Park suggested. Maybe we can negotiate for some releases. Jin nodded. It was the civilized thing to do. He opened communication channels to the Empire command ship and broadcast on standard galactic frequencies. "This is Captain Jin Min-ho of the Human Colony Fleet," he announced. "We request immediate negotiation regarding the release of slaves in this system. We are prepared to discuss compensation and trade agreements." The Empire response came within minutes. High Admiral Cruex appeared on the view screen. He was a tall being with dark skin and bright yellow eyes. His uniform was covered with medals made from the bones of different species. "Humans," Cruex said with amusement. "We have heard of your kind, primitive Deathworlders who recently discovered space travel. You have no authority in this system. Leave immediately or face destruction." "We cannot leave while intelligent beings suffer," Jin replied. "Please consider negotiation. We can offer valuable trade goods and technical knowledge in exchange for gradual release programs." Cruex laughed. It was a sound like breaking glass. "You misunderstand your position, human. These slaves are property of the domination empire. We do not negotiate with property. We do not bargain with insects." The transmission cut off. Jin waited for renewed communication, hoping the Empire would reconsider. Instead, alarms began screaming from one of the orbital platforms. Through the view screen, Jin watched Empire guards drag hundreds of slaves to viewing windows. They were beings of different species, all chained together. "What are they doing?" Park asked. Cruex's voice returned to the communication channel. "You wanted to see our slaves, humans. Watch closely." The guards began executing the slaves one by one. They used energy weapons that cut through bodies slowly. The deaths were not quick. The Empire wanted the humans to see suffering. "Stop!" Jin shouted into the transmitter. "We will negotiate any terms. We will pay any price." "The price is your immediate departure," Cruex replied. "For every minute you remain in this system, we kill 100 slaves. The choice is yours." Jin watched 10,000 beings die in the next hour. Men, women, children of species he had never seen before. They died slowly while Empire citizens watched from safe viewing areas and laughed. Something changed in Jin's mind. Something fundamental shifted in his understanding of the universe. There were some evils that could not be reasoned with, some cruelties that could not be stopped by words. He opened fleet communications to all 6 human ships. "There will be no negotiation," he announced. "There will be no mercy. There will be no retreat. We are going to destroy every Empire ship in this system. We are going to free every slave we can reach. And we are going to make the Empire pay for every death we just witnessed." The human ships moved toward the Empire fleet. They were tiny compared to the massive slave vessels. Their weapons were mining tools converted for combat. They had no chance of victory in conventional terms. But Jin no longer cared about conventional terms. "All ships, target the guard towers around the slave compounds," he ordered. "Use ramming speed if necessary. Our job is not to survive this. Our job is to save as many as we can and make the Empire regret what they showed us." The battle began with human ships diving toward the planet like falling stars. Empire weapons fired back, but the humans scattered and weaved between the larger ships. They used their smaller size and desperate courage to reach targets the Empire thought were protected. Yoon led his ship directly into an orbital platform. The explosion destroyed the facility and freed 3,000 slaves who escaped in emergency pods. He died with his crew, but his last transmission was laughter. Park coordinated rescue operations while dodging Empire fighters. She guided freed slaves to emergency shelters and broadcast instructions in 17 different languages. Jin's ship rammed through the command center of a slave transport. As his vessel broke apart, he transmitted one final message to the Empire fleet. "This is just the beginning. We sent word to every human colony in known space. When they see what we have seen, when they learn what you have done, They will come for you. All of them will come. The 6 human ships were destroyed within hours. But they had freed over 50,000 slaves and destroyed major Empire installations. More importantly, they had recorded everything and transmitted the data to human space. 3 weeks later, the recordings reached the human colonies. The response was immediate and universal. Every human world began preparing for war. The Empire had made a critical error. They thought they were dealing with a primitive species that would retreat when shown superior force. They did not understand that humans become most dangerous when they decide that victory is less important than justice. High Admiral Cruex studied the reports from Thexol's system with growing irritation. The human attack had been more destructive than expected. They lost 3 major installations and 50,000 valuable slaves. Worse, the humans had transmitted detailed records of Empire operations to their home worlds. "A minor setback," Cruex told his staff officers. "These Deathworlders are emotional and primitive. They sacrifice themselves for meaningless gestures. We will crush their next attack quickly and end this foolishness." His intelligence reports showed 12 human colony worlds mobilizing fleets. The numbers were not impressive. Maybe 300 ships total, mostly converted civilian vessels. The Empire controlled over 2,000 military ships and countless support vessels. "Deploy Battle Group 7 to human space," Cruex ordered. "Destroy their homeworlds and end this rebellion before it spreads." Battle Group 7 was the Empire's punishment fleet, 500 ships designed to destroy entire civilizations. They had wiped out dozens of species over the centuries. The humans would be just another entry in the Empire's victory records. But when Battle Group 7 reached the first human colony, they found something unexpected. The humans were not hiding behind their defenses waiting to be destroyed. They were attacking. Captain Song Jihye commanded the human fleet at New Seoul Colony. Her ships were cargo haulers and passenger transports fitted with improvised weapons. Against the massive Empire battle cruisers, they looked like insects attacking elephants. The humans attacked anyway. Song led her ships straight into the Empire formation. They ignored the enemy weapons firing at them. They used ramming attacks against ships 10 times their size. When their vessels were destroyed, the crews used escape pods and EVA suits as guided missiles. "What is wrong with these beings?" demanded Empire Fleet Commander Vextar. "They are committing suicide for no strategic gain." But the human tactics were working. The converted cargo ships carried massive mining charges originally used to break up asteroids. When they rammed Empire vessels, the explosions tore through armor that was designed to resist conventional weapons. Captain Song's ship was the last one destroyed. As her vessel broke apart, she transmitted a message that would become famous throughout human space. "We are not dying for nothing. We are dying so you learn that some prices are too high to pay. When you kill innocents, humans will come for you. When you torture children, humans will find you. When you think you are safe in your evil, remember us." Battle Group 7 won the engagement. But they lost over 100 ships to the human ramming attacks. The survivors were shaken. They had never fought an enemy that welcomed death if it meant hurting the Empire. Across human space, the reaction was immediate. The colonists saw the recordings from New Seoul and became even more determined. They stopped thinking about survival and started thinking about revenge. Commander Yoon Tae-hyung's younger brother, Yoon Minho, took command of the fleet at Kepler Station. Unlike his cautious brother who had died in the first attack, Minho was a student of military history. He had studied every war Earth had ever fought. "We cannot defeat them ship for ship," Minho told his officers, "but we can make victory cost more than they are willing to pay. We can make them fear us." Minho implemented tactics from Earth's most brutal conflicts. His ships carried nuclear weapons, biological agents, and chemical explosives. When Empire fleets attacked human colonies, they found themselves fighting enemies who had no limits. The humans poisoned water supplies on Empire bases. They released genetically modified viruses that targeted Empire physiology. They used suicide bombers who smiled while they died. "They fight like animals," reported Empire General Thexmore after the Battle of Proxima Colony. "They use weapons that civilized species abandoned millennia ago. They have no honor, no limits, no mercy." But the most shocking development came when the humans reached their first slave world. Dr. Park Soo-jin's research team had survived the first battle by hiding in an asteroid field. They spent months studying Empire technology and communications before launching their own mission. Park led a rescue fleet to the Corvani homeworld, where the Empire enslaved master engineers. The humans expected to find broken beings who needed protection. Instead, they found allies hungry for revenge. The Corvani had built most of the Empire's advanced weapons under threat of extinction. They knew every technical specification, every design weakness, every hidden vulnerability. When the humans freed them, the Corvani immediately began upgrading human ships with stolen Empire technology. "You fight for others without hope of profit," said Chief Engineer Korval. "This is something we have not seen in 5 centuries of slavery. We will help you destroy our masters." Within weeks, human ships were carrying weapons that the Empire thought only they possessed: energy shields, quantum torpedoes, and faster-than-light missiles. But the humans used them differently than the Empire expected. The Empire used their advanced weapons to control and intimidate. The humans used them to rescue and avenge. Every freed slave world provided more allies, more technology, and more reasons to fight. Keeper Noldis of the ancient Galactic Council watched the conflict with growing alarm. He was old enough to remember the last time a species had fought with such intensity. It had ended with the complete extinction of both civilizations. "We must intervene," Noldis told the Council. "The humans are awakening something in themselves that will consume the galaxy. They fight not for territory or resources, but for principle. Such wars never end until one side is completely destroyed." But other Council members disagreed. The Empire had ignored galactic law for centuries. They had enslaved peaceful species and committed atrocities that violated every treaty. If the humans wanted to fight them, perhaps it was time. "Let the Deathworlders try," said Councillor Zephana. "The Empire is too strong. When the humans are defeated, perhaps they will learn to respect established order." The Council was wrong about who would learn respect. Across the galaxy, word spread about the humans who fought impossible battles to free slaves. Species that had accepted Empire rule for generations began to whisper about resistance. On 1,000 worlds, beings looked up at the stars and wondered if the strange Deathworlders might actually win. Some began to hope, others began to prepare. The Empire still controlled most of the galaxy. They still had superior numbers and technology. But they no longer faced just 6 converted mining ships. They faced an enemy that viewed death as an acceptable price for justice, and that enemy was growing stronger every day. The war spread across the galaxy like wildfire. What started as 6 mining ships trying to help had become a conflict that threatened the foundation of galactic civilization. The humans were no longer fighting alone. Captain Jin Subin commanded the Liberation Fleet at Zerathi Prime, where the Empire held 12 million slaves from 40 different species. Her ships were a mixture of human vessels and alien designs, crewed by beings who had tasted freedom and refused to give it up. "Remember," Subin told her mixed crews, "we are not here to conquer. We are here to liberate. Every being we free becomes an ally. Every Empire facility we destroy weakens their ability to enslave others." The assault on Zerathi Prime was unlike any battle the galaxy had seen. Human ships used their signature ramming attacks, but now they were supported by Corvani engineering and Vallani stealth technology. The freed Zephyrian crystal beings provided computing power that let human fleets coordinate attacks across multiple star systems simultaneously. High Admiral Cruex watched the battle reports with growing desperation. His forces were winning individual engagements, but the strategic situation was collapsing. Every human victory freed more slaves who joined their cause. Every Empire defeat encouraged rebellions on previously loyal worlds. "How many ships do they have now?" Cruex asked his intelligence chief. "Difficult to determine, sir. They build new vessels using captured Empire technology. The freed species provide materials and expertise. Conservative estimate is over 2,000 combat ships, but they appear and disappear faster than we can track them." Cruex studied the tactical displays. Red markers showed human fleets striking across the galaxy. They hit slave worlds, supply convoys, and research stations with coordinated precision. But their strategy made no sense by conventional military logic. "They are ignoring our core worlds," Cruex observed. "They could attack our homeworlds and industrial centers, but instead they focus on freeing slaves. Why?" The answer came from captured human communications. Dr. Park Sujin, now commanding a diplomatic mission, explained their strategy in a message to all galactic governments. "We are not fighting for conquest or territory," Park broadcast. "We are fighting to end slavery everywhere in the galaxy. We will continue until every intelligent being is free to choose their own destiny. The Empire can surrender their slaves and live, or they can fight us and die. There will be no third option." The Empire tried increasingly desperate measures. They moved their most valuable slaves to hidden fortress worlds protected by massive defensive fleets. They threatened to execute entire populations if humans continued attacking. The humans responded by accelerating their attacks. Commander Yoon Minho led a strike force that liberated 3 fortress worlds in a single week. His tactics shocked even his own allies. "We cannot let them kill hostages while we debate strategy," Minho explained to the Corvani engineers, who questioned his methods. "Every day we wait, thousands die. We must hit them faster than they can kill innocents." The liberation of the ethereal gas giant colonies changed everything. The ethereals were energy beings who existed in the upper atmosphere of gas planets. The Empire had enslaved them by trapping their essence in containment fields and using them as living batteries. When humans freed the ethereals, they gained allies unlike anything in the galaxy. The energy beings could travel through space without ships, passing through solid matter and existing in multiple dimensions. They began attacking Empire installations from inside, destroying equipment and freeing slaves before the guards knew what was happening. The psychological impact on Empire forces was devastating. Their soldiers began to fear that the enemy could appear anywhere, anytime. Morale collapsed as reports spread of installations destroyed by invisible attackers. Cruex made one final attempt at negotiation. He contacted the human fleet directly and offered terms that would have been unthinkable months earlier. "We will release 10% of our slave population," Cruex offered. "In exchange, you will withdraw from Empire space and cease all hostile actions. This is more generous than any civilization in galactic history has offered." The human response came from Captain Lee Dae-hyun, whose sister had died in the first battle at Thexal System. "High Admiral, you seem to misunderstand our position. We are not here to bargain for some slaves while leaving others in chains. We are here to end slavery completely. 10% is not acceptable. 50% is not acceptable. Anything less than 100% is not acceptable." "That is impossible," Cruex replied. "Our entire civilization is built on slave labor. Without slaves, our economy collapses. Our people cannot survive without the current system." Lee's answer became legendary throughout the galaxy. "Then your people will learn new ways to survive, or they will not survive at all. But slavery ends now." The final phase of the war began when humans discovered the Empire's most horrific secret. Deep in the Maelstrom Nebula, they found the genetic laboratories where the Empire created new slave species by combining DNA from different races. The laboratories contained millions of artificially created beings designed to be perfect slaves. They had enhanced intelligence for complex work, modified bodies for harsh labor, and programmed psychological conditioning to prevent rebellion. Dr. Park led the investigation team that documented the facilities. What they found was worse than anything they had seen before. The Empire was not just enslaving existing species, they were creating new ones specifically to be enslaved. "This ends today," Park announced to the Liberation Fleet. "We destroy every laboratory, every genetic sample, every piece of research, and we free every being in these facilities, regardless of how they were created." The assault on the genetic laboratories was the most brutal battle of the war. The Empire defended them with everything they had, knowing that losing these facilities would end their ability to replace slave populations. The humans attacked with total commitment. Ships piloted by freed slaves rammed through defensive lines. Ethereal beings possessed Empire computers and turned their weapons against them. Corvani engineers sabotaged life support systems, while Volani swimmers infiltrated through water recycling systems. When the battle ended, the Empire's genetic research was completely destroyed. Over 5 million artificially created beings were freed and given the choice of their own futures. High Admiral Cruex sat in his command center and realized that the war was lost. The Empire still controlled their core worlds, but they could no longer replace their slave populations. Without slaves, their economy would collapse within years. But the humans were not finished. They had learned something during the war that changed their understanding of their own nature. They had discovered that when they fought for others, they became stronger than they ever imagined possible. The final assault on the Empire homeworlds was about to begin. The Empire's core worlds had never seen enemy ships in their space. For over 1,000 years, the Domination Empire had carried war to other species, while their homeworlds remained safe and prosperous. That changed when the Human Liberation Fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel around the Empire capital. Admiral Kim Hyun-jin looked at the massive planet below and felt no satisfaction in reaching this moment. The war had cost millions of lives and taken 3 years to reach this point, but it would end today. The Empire capital was beautiful. Crystal cities rose from tropical islands, while orbital stations glittered like jewels around the planet. Gardens and parks covered the continents. Art galleries and museums displayed treasures stolen from conquered worlds, all of it built on slave labor. "Admiral," reported Communications Officer Shin Yuna, "we are receiving surrender offers from 37 different Empire factions. They want to negotiate separate peace treaties." Kim studied the displays showing Empire defensive fleets. They still had over 500 ships protecting their homeworlds, but many were sending messages indicating they would not fight if promised fair treatment. The war had changed both sides. The Empire's military was divided between those who wanted to fight to the death and those who recognized that continued resistance was pointless. Many Empire citizens had learned about their government's true nature and were horrified by what they discovered. "Open communication to all Empire vessels and planetary governments," Kim ordered. "This is Admiral Kim Hyun-jin of the Human Liberation Fleet. We offer unconditional amnesty to any Empire citizen who lays down weapons and assists in freeing remaining slaves. Those who continue to support slavery will be treated as enemy combatants." High Admiral Cruex appeared on the main view screen from his flagship. Behind him, the bridge showed signs of damage from recent battles. His uniform was torn, and his yellow eyes showed the exhaustion of someone who had fought a losing war for too long. "Admiral Kim," Cruex said with formal dignity. "I am prepared to discuss terms for the surrender of all Empire military forces. In exchange, I request protection for Empire civilians who were not directly involved in slave operations." Kim had expected this moment for months, but it still felt surreal. The being who had ordered the execution of thousands of slaves was asking for mercy. "High Admiral, your military forces may surrender unconditionally. Empire civilians will be protected if they cooperate with liberation operations. But there will be war crimes tribunals for those responsible for atrocities. That includes you." Cruex nodded slowly. "I understand. I have prepared full records of all slave operations, including locations of hidden facilities and lists of collaborators. This information will be provided to your forces." The formal surrender took place on the flagship of the human fleet. Representatives from 47 freed species attended the ceremony. Zefthara, the Valani scientist whose original message had started everything, stood beside Kim as Cruex signed the surrender documents. "It is finished," Zefthara said quietly. "My people are free. All of our peoples are free." But Kim knew the hard work was just beginning. Across the galaxy, over 3 billion beings had been freed from slavery. They needed homes, food, medical care, and help rebuilding their lives. Many had been slaves for so long, they did not know how to live as free beings. Dr. Park Sujin led the massive humanitarian effort. She coordinated with representatives from every freed species to establish refugee centers, medical facilities, and repatriation programs. The logistics were overwhelming. "We need to help them remember how to be free," Park explained to the Liberation Fleet commanders. "Some of these beings have been slaves for generations. Their children have never known anything else. Freedom is a skill that must be relearned." The Galactic Council finally acted, offering to help coordinate relief efforts. Keeper Null this personally traveled to meet with human leaders, something that had never happened in Council history. "You have done something unprecedented," Null this told Kim during their meeting. "You fought a war not for territory or resources, but purely to help others. This has changed how every civilization in the galaxy thinks about moral responsibility." The changes were already visible across civilized space. Species that had remained neutral during the war were now examining their own treatment of worker populations. Governments that had ignored slavery in distant regions were passing laws to prevent such practices. But the most significant change was in how other species viewed humans. The Deathworlders, who had seemed primitive and emotional, were now recognized as the most morally committed civilization in the galaxy. Commander Yoon Minho established the new Galactic Liberation Force, a permanent military organization dedicated to preventing future slavery and protecting vulnerable species. The force included ships and personnel from every species that had been freed during the war. "We learned something important," Minho explained to new recruits. "When good people do nothing, evil spreads. When good people act together, evil can be stopped. But it requires constant vigilance and the willingness to fight for others." The Empire's former territory was divided among the freed species, with humans taking no planets for themselves. Human colonies received advanced technology and trade agreements, but they insisted that freed species govern their own worlds. Some galactic observers questioned this decision. The humans could have claimed the Empire's resources and become the dominant power in the galaxy. Instead, they chose to remain protectors rather than rulers. 5 years after the war ended, Zefthara returned to her homeworld. The underwater cities had been rebuilt, and young Valani swam freely through the coral gardens their ancestors had created. She visited the memorial dedicated to those who died during the Empire occupation, including her sister Velnara. "We remember them," Zefthara said during the memorial service, "but we also remember those who came from across the galaxy to help strangers. The humans taught us that freedom is not free. It must be protected by those who value it more than their own lives. The war crimes tribunals continued for years, but they were conducted fairly under galactic law. Even High Admiral Cruex received a trial before being sentenced to life imprisonment for crimes against sentient beings. In his final statement, Cruex said something that surprised everyone. The humans were right. Some things are more important than survival. I spent my life believing that power justified any action. I was wrong. History will remember them as heroes and us as villains. This is as it should be. The galaxy was forever changed. The phrase human response entered the common language, meaning total commitment to moral principles regardless of personal cost. When civilizations faced moral crises, they asked themselves, what would the humans do? Captain Jin Minho's sacrifice at Thexal System was remembered as the moment that changed galactic history. A small memorial station was built in orbit around the planet where he died. The inscription was simple. They begged for compassion. He responded with everything. Dr. Park established the Institute for Galactic Ethics, which studied how to prevent future atrocities and promote cooperation between species. Her most famous lecture was titled, "Sometimes the most civilized response to barbarism is controlled barbarism in defense of the innocent." The universe was not perfect. There were still conflicts, injustices, and suffering. But slavery as a galactic institution was ended forever. And every species knew that somewhere in the galaxy, humans were watching and would respond to cries for help. As Zepthara often said when asked about the war, they heard our plea for compassion and gave us something greater, absolute commitment to justice. This is the gift the humans gave to the galaxy. This is why we will never forget them.